last year, 14, 15 months, than you've probably seen in Streator over the last 5 years. I think they've knocked down a lot of doors, put a lot of people on notice that it's not business as usual anymore in Streator, that we're serious about ridding some of these people out of our city, getting them arrested, getting them charged, getting them convicted, or at least convincing them that it might be better for them to move out of Streator to do their business. But we're just not going to put up with it anymore. I can tell you, because I have a lot of experience in my previous job with Chicago Police with the Organized Crime Division, working narcotics, doing a lot of search warrants myself. I'm glad to see this activity here. We've been doing a lot of, what do you want to call it, canine missions, I guess we call it? Directed patrol missions in the evening. We now have 2 canine officers, not 1, we now have 2. Our second one has now been fully certified by the state in drug detection. We've done them in conjunction with Trident, with the LaSalle County Sheriff's Department, at times Livingston County Sheriff's Department. These concentrated missions have resulted in some arrests for people, felons with guns and drugs in their person. So we've gotten some of those people off the streets. And we've just sent a message to a lot of our, how do I want to say, our frequent flyers, that it's not going to be business as usual in Streator anymore. We see you, we know what you're doing, and we're going to get you through any legal means at our disposal. At that point, I'll turn it over to Deputy Chief Wood. Robert.
I'm Deputy.
Here's a button.
Here you go. I'm Deputy Chief Wood. I've been here for 20 years, and more importantly, I'm a lifelong Streator resident, about 45 years old. So I feel you guys' pain, your concerns, because this isn't the town I remember when I was younger. The past 16 months have been trying for our department, trying for the LaSalle County State's Attorney's Office as well, everyone involved. The violence we've seen isn't something that we're accustomed to. I just want to go over some things over the past 16 months. Some of our shootings, a lot of them have been related, retaliatory in effect. We've got many of them are pending trial right now. One good thing that our state's attorney's office has done for us in these gun charges, they are detaining people. We face a lot of difficulties with the Safety Act. I know for a lot of you guys, you might not understand what the laws are, but unfortunately, there's no more bond for some people. They're issued a citation, they're released back on the streets, they reoffend, then they go see a judge. Then it's up to a judge if they are released or not. It's a battle we're all fighting. It's something we're all still getting accustomed to and getting used to. But like I said, our state's attorney's office on these violent charges, they're doing everything they can to make sure these people are detained and stay behind bars and pending trial. I just want to go over some of our incidents over the past 16 months, just so maybe we can answer any questions before they even arise. Because in April of 23, that's when we really started to notice our uptick in activity, violent activity. First was in April 23, we had a shooting at a residence in the 600 block of East Kent Street. Person of interest was arrested, charged, and is pending trial. In May, we had a homicide of Shakita Kelly. We tracked down suspects in Memphis, Tennessee. They too were arrested and are still pending trial. June of 23, we had a reported shooting in the 100 block of North Bloomington Street. This was believed to be retaliatory to the May homicide. Suspect was identified. He was charged with other weapons and drugs charges later. He was convicted as well. June of 2023, we had a homicide of Sean King that's still currently under investigation. State's Attorney's Office has been working with us the entire way on that one, trying to close that case. On August of 23, we had a shooting at a residence in the 1700 block of North Bloomington Street that was unrelated to any of the other violence we've had here in town. That has been resolved through the courts as well. In October of 2023, we had a homicide of Joshua Salters that's still under active investigation. Our investigators are still following leads, working with federal agencies as well, trying to put together what actually happened. December 2023, we had reports of shots fired in the 900 block of East Bridge Street. Due to lack of cooperation from our victim, we hit a brick wall. We still identified the suspects. We sent the case to the state's attorney's office. However, with the lack of cooperation from our victims, it makes it difficult for them to try a case. December 23, sorry, I'll get ahead of myself. March of 24, we had shots fired at the 200 block of West 10th Street. That report was forwarded to our state's attorney's office pending charges. April 24, we had a vehicle being shot after an altercation on the 500 block of South Illinois Street. That too, subjects were identified. Information was provided to the state's attorney's office for review and prosecution. May of 24, another one. We had multiple shots around the 300 block of South Vermilion Street. The investigation provided that shots were fired. We were never able to locate any suspects, though, unfortunately. In August of 24, shots fired in Broadway and Chavanaugh Street. The only information we had was an unknown white male on a bicycle fired shots off in the air. We had no other information that was able to assist our investigation. September of this year, shooting outside of a house party, the 200 block of Colorado Street. Male subject had been shot outside of the residence. Officers received no cooperation from anyone involved. With that, we were unable to follow up. The investigation is still ongoing. However, again, if we're not getting cooperation from anyone, it makes our jobs that much more difficult. October, the past few weeks, that's why we're all here. We've had multiple shootings, some possibly related, then one that was totally different, where a subject shot at a house out of a moving vehicle. He was identified that night, taken into custody that night, and still pending, still being detained by the DeSale County State's Attorney's Office. What we ask for the public is, if you guys see something, say something. If you see something that seems suspicious, don't hesitate to call it in. That's what our officers are here for. Try to follow up on anything. We'll handle any call, we'll handle any report, and we take it seriously. We want to make this town as safe for you guys as we can. I raised my kids here. I want to be able to raise grandkids here. So I'm right along with you. Anything we can do to do better, we're here to listen. But we also need some help from you guys as well. We do have a surveillance registration system through our City of Streator webpage. And what that does, that affords people who have home surveillance systems on the outside of the residence the opportunity to register them with our city. That doesn't give us access to your cameras. All that does is lets us know where they're at in case we have a critical incident. It makes it easier for our guys to then reach out to someone who's from that area, as opposed to going door to door looking for cameras. Because in some of these critical situations, that takes a lot of time. And as most of you know, we don't have the manpower of some of these other agencies. But no, I thank you guys for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I also wanted to point out, in a recent shooting, we put some parameters on our Facebook page of people in those areas. If they had cameras, to please contact us so we could look at their footage. Nobody contacted us. So we really do need help from you all. You know, if you see something, say something. We talked to people who say they heard shots fired hours earlier. And they said, well, I heard it, but I went back to sleep. I heard it, but I didn't want to talk to the police, so I didn't call in. Well, call in. You don't have to talk to us in person, but just tell us what you heard. If you heard 4, you heard 5, which direction you believe it was in, just tell us something. Those kind of things can't wait for 3, 4, 5 hours to call the police or to tell us what little you may know. It may be something little to you all, it may be something more significant to us. And one more thing I want to point out. Some of these crimes involve children, juveniles. They shouldn't be out on the street during these hours. And that's where you parents step in by being parents, knowing where your kids are, making sure they're home, keeping them off the streets. We need that help. It's unfortunate, but today some parents don't want to be parents, and we need you to step up and do that job. Know where your kids are, know who their friends are, know where they're at, okay? We can't police all the kids that are out here in the streets overnight, but we know they're out here, we see them out here, and if we see them out here, we know some of you have to know your kids are out here. So make sure your kids are home, in the house, where they should be. You know, when I was a kid, we had to be in by the time the street lights came on. That was the rule. Now we see them out here all hours of the night, and it just shouldn't be that way. So I'm asking you all, we need your help. We can't do it alone, but you gotta call in what you see and what you know. Because if you don't share that information with us, we don't have it. And now we got to spend some effort to go dig up that information somewhere else. We may not even get that information because nobody bothered to call. Everyone assumes someone else is going to call the police, but nobody called the police. Okay, Friday night, I called in shots fired from my apartment. I didn't know where it was coming from, but I told him I believe it's from the east. But I heard it, and I called it in right away. Woke me up from sleep too. But hey, I reside in Streator. This is my city too. So I'm concerned. I don't want to see any of you all hurt. I don't want to see any of my officers hurt. And I want to get these gun toters, these gangbangers, whatever, these drugs, I want them off the streets, just like you do. I want our streets safe for everybody. Okay, if anybody has any questions, you ma'am in the back, it's a purple top.
Me. Are most of them, do you think, drug related?
I can't say if most of them are, but I'll say some of them are.
What I'm getting at is the people who are renting the houses to these people. Can't we, as a city, do something to those landlords? Are there not being background checks done on these people? We don't want the thugs here.
Right. Landlords are requested to do background checks on tenants, however, it's not required by law. One thing we do have in our favor is the use of nuisance abatement, to where when we are called to basically crime-riddled apartment buildings, we have an opportunity to shut those buildings down. One of the problem houses we had a year ago was over here on East Hickory Street.
Like the Colorado Street one.
Yes, and that's
Something
something.
happening with those landlords?
That's something we're in the process of doing to the nuisance abatement. It does take time.
It does take time. It's not an overnight process or a one-week process. It takes time. We have to build those cases where we can show that this area needs the attention it deserves from nuisance abatement.
So how do we change the law?
Well, I'll mention this. So actually this summer, the state of Illinois tried to make it illegal to have a nuisance abatement law. There was a House Bill 5432, and there was also a Senate bill. They've been stopped, but with the help of the police department, I gathered information on that property at 121 West Hickory. And since 2016, we had over 150 calls to that property. Now, the nuisance abatement, what we're allowed to do, there have to be certain, it can't just be code violations, there have to be certain, almost felony acts at the property. But we did send letters to all of our representatives saying this is what it'll do to a city like ours. We need, as a city, to be able to stop and go after the landlords that are not caring, that just want the check. And so that's a big thing. I'm watching to see if it comes back again this next session. But we do want to make sure that we're watching the laws. But the bill really said it was taking that and saying you're not allowed to do that anymore. So for now, that's been fought. We do continue. We have the rental inspection. We're on round 7 of the rental property inspection. So we've gone through 6 rounds. We are on round 7, which is the landlords that have not yet complied. And so some of them are going through and doing administrative search warrants. We're building cases one by one and trying to go after them, but it takes time. And we're chipping away at it over and over. And I think every April we do an update on that at our council meetings, but we do continuously go after those last. Because of that, we have not made the original rounds 1 through 6. We have not made them refile or re-inspect because we want to make sure we get everyone first. That last group, round 7, is the one that we're fighting right now. So.
Well, the only thing I can add is that we haven't yet utilized the state code that allows us to go after problem properties because of criminal activity. We've been able to get rid of these properties because of property maintenance issues. That's how we were able to get rid of the Hickory house. We have plenty of them in town. And I'd say since about 2019, we started a cleanup Streator campaign, and we have probably tripled the number of citations we've issued. We're going after properties. We're now hitting the roadblock where we have the uncooperative property owners, and the mayor mentioned we're having to go through a laborious process to get search warrants and get into those properties, but we are going to do that. One by one, we're gonna be addressing these problem rental properties in town.
I have a question, and it goes back to what this lady back here asked. Oh, I'm sorry.
You said something about the kids running around. What happened to the curfew laws in this town? Why are the kids not being picked up for curfew?
Curfew laws are still in effect. Sunday night, excuse me, ma'am, Sunday night to Thursday night, 10:30 p.m. they have to be inside. Friday night, Saturday night, they have to be inside by 11:30. We pick up kids and take them home all the time.
I'm talking 10-year-olds.
Again, we have arrested 10-year-olds who are out here at past curfew and also breaking the law.
Arrest their parents.
Is there
an
ordinance?
What about this kind of stuff? These kids are growing up around this stuff, and they're causing problems also. And we can't approach them. We have to call the police, and the police say, well, we can't do anything because they're young. They're underage. Well, hey, who do you go to?
Chief, what about bringing back the peer court for the kids? What about that?
That's something we can consider.
I think it did a lot of good when we had it.
Peer jury,
Yeah, jury, that's what it was called. Do you guys think that's worth bringing back?
It's something we definitely can consider.
I think-
But here, I want to point something else out to you. We had a parent call about their kid being beaten up by another child. And the kid had injuries showing that he had been beaten up. The officer approached the child that the young man said had beaten him up. And the child admitted it. When the father came up and the officer explained what the situation was, do you know what the parent's response was to the officer? Don't you have better things to do? Why aren't you arresting real criminals?
That's the problem, right?
Several hours later, the parent called the police back at their home, the parent of the offender. And he created a whole new story, a whole new alibi as to what his kid was doing, as opposed to the truth that came out when the kid admitted it right in front of the father. So this is part of the problem we're dealing with. Parents don't want to be parents. Sometimes parents are aiding and abetting what these kids are doing. And that's a battle too. I personally also would like to see parents held more accountable for what their children are doing. Yes, sir.
Is there a law in the books that would address the parents aiding delinquency to their children if they're not being parents like this?
There are child neglect laws on the books. That also brings in DCFS, other agencies.
What's wrong with that?
Well,
Nothing. We
well,
have
everything's
brought
on-
them in.
Yeah, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to gather your input, and everything's on the table, will be looked at and discussed. Anything that's achievable, we'll work on. I mean, that's why we're here.
Sir, I got a very big one. It's kind of like the elephant in the room. We got Halloween coming up. I can't trust my children going to school because we have houses getting shot up. I've been born and raised here. I felt safer in Iraq, for God's sakes. The bullets are getting closer to my home. I don't want my kids outside playing. We always say it was a one-off or isolated incident, but we're getting numb to it. It's always drugs. We have overdoses. These kids are seeing their parents and there's no accountability. Yes, I get it. Let's be soft on crime. Our state loves it. We defunded the police. I'm glad you're doing something. You're refunding it. Thank you. You know, I'm sorry. Love and prayers for your loss from a shooting isn't gonna fix the loss. People have voted this crap in, and now we're having consequences of being soft, and it's not working. My kids should be able to be walking home from a sporting event instead of mom picking them up because I'm afraid that they're gonna walk home and get shot. It ain't the stranger danger with wants a candy with the white van. They're just shooting. It ain't up at the bars. Now it's just randomly we're gonna shoot up houses. We need peace of mind. This safety act, yeah, we're all screwed. I know your guys' hands are tied. But we need more reassurance when we send our kids to school that they're gonna be safe there and out on the street when they come home. We should be allowed them to play in the backyard, but we can't. How are we gonna even allow them to go trick or treating? Our streets are gonna be flooded with kids and not be a shooting field. That's what I think a lot of our citizens haven't said here tonight.
Well, I think we're all aware of the problem, that's why we're meeting. We had a shooting at a birthday party in City Park. I mean, it doesn't get worse than that.
We want to know answers. We want accountability. Our senators of this state, our representatives are putting our lives at danger. I'm seriously saying I was safer in Iraq than I am here in this town. That is messed up. If you honestly want to think about that. Our state senators are not representing us. Our city councils are not representing us. Because guess what? We're screaming that we're not safe. Yes, there's been many council members that have changed hands over the years. Now we have a new mayor. Things are improving. But it started back in 2008 when the statistics stopped going to the newspapers. The crime stopped being reported. I've been burglarized. You know what I got? I'm gonna show up, I'm not gonna take pictures or fingerprints. And guess what? If I come back now, it's hearsay. Now the police give you a phone call instead of showing up when there's a problem. This is normal. Why do we talk to the cops? Because they're not gonna do their job. Everybody knows it. That's why we stop talking. Because we know we're either gonna get a phone call of we're not gonna show up because it's not worth it. Or it's my shift change.
I will say every time I have called, I applaud you guys.
Me
I
too.
have called the
Me too.
one
Me
time
too.
you were there with me.
And I think you've seen over the last couple of years, especially since Chief Franklin came to town, quite a bit of Facebook posting.
Back here.
We've really tried hard. Chief Franklin and his team have tried hard to put information out on Facebook, and you know, we don't hold back. We let you know what's going on in town. And unfortunately, we had to take the comment section off because we had some people from out of state weighing in, former Streator residents. But and we can't just pull one comment out of the group of comments. And so that conversation has to occur off of city-sponsored websites. But we're trying to put all of the information out there. I asked the department to lay out all the shootings so that everyone has a sense of what's going on in town, that we're not covering it up. That's why the mayor decided to hold this meeting tonight. And so to get your input, to hear your frustrations, I think we're all frustrated.
You got a question back here.
Mayor, you want to take over?
This woman has been waiting. This lady's been waiting. Oh, wait, hold on, wait, she's been waiting for a long time.
My question and comment goes back to the original question that this lady back here on the back wall had. Going back to the properties and the landlords who are governing these properties. I've got a trailer on my block that has a different change of occupants probably every 2 to 3 months, and it's known that this person that has this property is pimping them out or using them for other things in return for rent and other things as well. And this particular property, it's been going on and on and on for about 5 years. So what are the parameters?
If anyone sees any illicit activity occurring, let us know. Have you contacted us about that?
numbers of times.
Okay, well, I'm David Plyman. I'm the city manager here.
Okay, I've never talked to you. I've talked to
Shoot me an email, give me a call, and then I can bring it to the attention to make sure it's being handled as best as we can. Sometimes we run into roadblocks, legal roadblocks. We removed a trailer just last week, so our team is out there removing, trailers and tearing down homes and doing all the other things that we need to do.
Yeah, are you listening to actually listen, or are you just listening to hear yourself talk? Because this lady made a lot of points, and you're just making a lot of excuses.
I'm with her.
Natasha, one thing you brought up, it's a good point. You talked about our representatives and senators and everything like that. I'd like to remind everybody, we have elections coming up. I'm hoping everybody's paying attention to that and voting for people that have your best interest in mind. Because that's one way to get some of these laws to change. That's the only way. Because unfortunately, that's not something we can do. We can't just go changing the laws. So, I mean, I'm hoping all you voters are out there and paying attention to those things.
I'd like to mention just something on that. So last year, in September, there's an annual conference called the Illinois Municipal League Conference. I attended to represent our city, find out ideas on different programs. There is a presentation scheduled on the Safety Act. And the 3 speakers that sponsored that bill canceled the day before. So what does that tell you? They called in emergency, they got a couple police chiefs, they got an attorney. But the people that sponsored the bill wouldn't even show their faces to the council members from the entire state. So it's very disheartening and frustrating from us because we're not for it. You know, we understand your concerns, but they didn't even show up to let us, so that we could let them have it. So please, contact your reps, reach out to them. You know, we can do so much as a city, but you know, the layers of government keep going up. That's not one we can change here today. So just please keep
Contact information on Facebook.
Absolutely, yeah. We can reach out to your state senators and House.
But even
Sure.
for us, so we.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Yeah, I'll put that on Facebook.
I have a question about when you ask for video surveillance. Is your first line of defense to rely on residences, ring cameras and things like that? Or does our city have any surveillance that they could put in these troublesome areas and move it around town where it needs to be? Or what is the first thing that's being done to try to stop the random shootings?
Yes, as far as surveillance in town, we do have our stationary downtown cameras. Those are operational. When it comes to other areas of town, we do have basic covert type cameras that we do put up in problem neighborhoods that we use for surveillance. But the thing is, when we're asking for surveillance, that's something that's an after the fact. It's a reactionary. We're not using that as our first line of defense. We're using that to strengthen cases in order to build for prosecution.
Yes, we do. We also have installed flock cameras, 8 of them in the last year. Probably going to install maybe 2 or 3 more over the next year as they get worked into the budget.
And are they strong enough to pull license plate on?
Yes.
Yes, that's what flock cameras are. They're license plate readers.
And not only do we have them in the city, we also have a cooperating network with Livingston County and other counties. We can share information. We can track cars, from suspect vehicles all around the state and even outside the state if need be.
One thing we can do if we do have video cameras is to call you and just tell you what we have.
Yes.
Yes, and I also made it's on if you go to the City of Streator's website and go to Police Department, there's a link there to enter information in. But, because I know not everyone's computer savvy in the room, I did make a copy of the form, a paper copy, if you want to fill that out and bring it to the police station. And that will register and allow us to contact you quickly, and we'll put it in the database, okay? But I do have copies of those up here.
Hi, my name is Tony Pettit, and I was an active member of Streator Neighborhood Watch for a number of years. Nearly 10 years ago, on graduation Sunday of 2015, there was a shooting behind in the alley of a house that I rent as an Airbnb. I had a foreign exchange student that year. His parents were staying at the house. About 9 o'clock at night, I got a phone call that said, would you please go check your property? And I said, what for? And they said, well, we want to see if there's any damage. I said, damage from what? Well, there was a shooting. So while the kids were graduating, thank God, my exchange student's parents, who were staying at the house, and I and my student were all at the high school during the graduation. Here we are, 10 years later nearly, and we're still facing the same problems. After that circumstance, I gathered a ton of information. I attended a council meeting. In that council meeting, in the package that I presented was a crime-free housing ordinance and a crime-free housing addendum. There was a community near Chicago, you probably know it, Posen, that is surrounded by other small communities, Robbins, Dixmoor, Blue Island, all those little towns. All the surrounding towns had high crime index figures. our Streator, I'm always told, you are in a high crime area, you're in a low income area, you have a high poverty level, your kids, this and that. I found Posen, which was very similar in its demographics to Streator, and yet somehow Posen had this really low number. Well, Posen has a crime-free housing ordinance, not just an addendum. The addendum is only for the property owner. You fill out the lease includes this addendum that says, if the police are called to your property and your house where you are renting, and you are charged with a crime, not convicted, just charged, you will be evicted. If your friend comes to your house and commits a crime, and they are charged with a crime, the police come, you will be evicted. Your tenant signs that addendum, and they know when they moved in that if they commit a crime and the police are called, they're out. You can evict them immediately. We have a crime-free housing addendum, which is great, but it's voluntary. The property owners are not required to use that crime-free housing addendum, which really doesn't give it any teeth, because the people who you want to sign that or be aware of that are not even being shown it because the landlord doesn't have to offer it. I provided pages and pages of documentation, and at that time, the only council member who was willing to accept the information was Mr. Ed Brozak, who I don't see him here. But he asked for the packet, and yet nothing has happened in 10 years in regard to the crime-free housing ordinance. Why don't we have that here? LaSalle has it, I believe.
We're not
Aurora
enrolled.
has it. Bolingbrook has it. Many communities have it.
We don't have the authority. LaSalle's home rule, we're not. That's the unfortunate part. We have to, and that's the thing. I mean, home rules come up a couple of times as a vote.
What's home rule? What's home rule?
Home rule is, I might kick it over to the city manager to do a better job than I, but home rule basically, as a community, we can only do what's on the state constitution, and unless it's silent. And so home rule gives us extra teeth in the game, but it has to be voted on by the citizens.
Well, I'll make another attempt. She did a really good job.
I see, kind of there.
Cities are creatures of state government, so all of our authorities rest with whatever the statutes that the state legislature and the governor have signed. So we operate under state law. A home rule community in Illinois, because it's part of the state mechanism, they allow communities with populations of 25,000 or larger to automatically gain home rule authority. Communities below 25 can gain home rule authority with a referendum. And what happens with communities that have home rule authorities, it flips in that we do not have to rely on state statute to adopt a local code unless we're preempted by state statute from adopting that code. So we can't, for example, adopt an income tax here in Streator because we're preempted. We can't adopt a liquor ordinance that allows drinking below 21 because home rule communities in Illinois are now preempted. 20 years or 30 years ago, they weren't preempted. And so you had different communities with different drinking ages. But it flips it. We now don't have to rely on a state code that gives us the authority to engage or to have these problems to solve, or these solutions to solve these local problems. And that's the problem with non-home rule communities. It becomes a one-size-fits-all. The state tells us what we can do, and we're just limited to whatever the statute allows.
So are you saying that can't do what she was suggesting? So the state does not allow a community to create a crime-free housing ordinance? But yet
I'm not gonna give you legal advice beyond what because I'm not a lawyer.
That says you have to paint your house for the rent for the landlords? That's a maintenance requirement.
We're gonna get into the
that we
weeds
have
really
the power
quickly
to
here,
do.
Tony, as to what legal authorities we have and that, and it depends on what type of code. That we have general police powers that grants a broad degree of authorities, but we're not at the level of where home rule communities are at in terms of the authorities to address local problems.
What was that?
So can you do it or you can't do it?
You know, we're gonna have to refer that to our attorney.
Who's your attorney?
Are we allowed to? Can we go to your attorney's office? What level do you have to be at that we're at?
It's not likely we're ever gonna achieve a population of 25,000 in the next number of years. our population has actually been on the decline. And so the only way we could become home rule authority is by a referendum of the people. The larger issue, though, is there has to be a trust factor between the people and the council that you elect, because the city non-home rule community or home rule communities have broader taxing authorities. Now, taxes are too high right now. I think everyone on our council agrees. We're trying our best to try to live within our means and to make that dollar spread. But that's often the barrier, is that communities don't want to allow council to have the authority to.
So higher taxes, less bullets?
No, I don't necessarily think that communities that have home rule have higher taxes, but they could, and it's the could that scares a lot of people off.
One more thing.
What was that?
Could the attorney and the state's attorney be here the next time?
We are.
The state's attorney's here, so we'll give him an opportunity. No, that's more of a corporate attorney issue than the state's attorney, and we can have future meetings and bring other people to meet with you.
Ms. Vaughn, to go back to your peer jury issue, I wanted Deputy Chief Wood to address that.
We did have peer jury back probably 10 or 12 years ago. It's one of the things that unfortunately suffered due to lack of interest. It fizzled out quickly. Troy ran it for a while. He was really good when he did, but unfortunately, like I said, the amount of people we were putting through the peer jury, it just dwindled down to where it became less and less.
Well, I have a group of people, and I'd be willing, if we could sit and talk about it, like, I probably have 5 or 6 people that would really be willing to dedicate time to that.
All right, get with me and talk about that.
Could you explain what peer jury is, because everyone may not know?
Yeah, peer jury is used as basically
a diversion.
Yeah, a diversion tactic as opposed to criminal charges for juveniles. They are put in front of a jury of their own peers who bring up other forms of, I don't want to say punishment, but discipline that can be enacted in lieu of being put in the juvenile court system and accruing points that lead to for future detention.
What's the co-op with the state's attorney to determine if it goes to peer jury or goes to the grounds? So they
Not every city has them. The city has to have them.
Okay, so they work together.
I think it would work.
It's definitely something we will explore. It's definitely something we should explore.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We have to, juvenile division, we have 2 full-time assistant state's attorneys doing juvenile cases, and they have a paralegal. But we do have to work with the cities in determining whether or not, even though the city through a peer jury may feel that it's the right way to go, we may know, because of our ability to get criminal histories, whether or not, no, they shouldn't go to a peer jury. They've been through this and that, and they really need to be prosecuted. But we do have to work with the cities.
Could you identify yourself so everyone knows?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Joe Navarro, State's Attorney, LaSalle County. And I want to introduce Jason Good, my first assistant, Mark Hostert, who is in charge of the Drive-In Truck Task Force, Laura Hall, 15, 20 years? A lot of years, prosecutor. Matt Kidder, 25 or 28 years as a prosecutor in the office. Also here is Brian LeBeau, who's from Streator, spends a lot of time down here assisting the police departments with their investigations. And also Allison Crestis, who's from Streator. And I can tell you, of the 15 total assistant state's attorneys, 95% of them are from LaSalle County. So they all have an interest in keeping their children safe and your children safe. And I don't know if this is the time or not. I think we had some time later to talk more and try to answer some questions. If not, I'll go ahead. I can tell you I'm on the Board of Governors of the State's Attorneys Association. Go ahead, sir, you got a question?
Yeah, I got a question. It seems like you're trying to establish that we need to have trust in you. We want to have trust in us that we're going to bring those information. But we have to trust that you are going to persecute these suspects accordingly, not, okay, here's one, we're gonna say that he needs to spend the night in jail and then let him out the next day. I know that this is a safety act, and that safety act prevents us from keeping them in jail. With that being said, what can we do to prevent it? What can we do to deter it?
How can we get rid of it?
What can we actually do? I've heard a lot of what we can't do. What we can't do, we got our hands tied. What can we do? That's what we're here for. What's going to be done moving forward? We know what's been done. The damage has been done. Let's move forward. The day that I moved to this town, you know what they said? Bet you guys can say it. You can beat her out of Streator. We don't want that. We don't want that. That was 7 years ago. It's still the same shit today. Let's do something about it. What can we do?
Well, let me say this. As Woody said, Streator's not like it used to be. I was a state's attorney here 88 to 96. I prosecuted the Harkar murder successfully, for those of you who may be old enough to remember that. But there's been a lot of problems in Streator since then. Suffice it to say, is that better? All right. I'm on the Board of Governors of the Appellate Prosecutors Association, which runs all 102 state's attorneys. And we've had, where do you want me to go? Don't say it. Where at?
Use that.
Right here?
Why don't you try here, and if I have to turn down the mics.
All right.
You want to try this one?
You got something metal up around your neck?
Do I have one?
Something metal up around your neck?
No.
I do have my St. Christopher medal, I do. Always wear it. Anyway, I'll talk about the Safety Act first. The Safety Act was created by the Black Caucus in Chicago. It's a group of legislatures from the city, St. Louis, Peoria, that have the authority to override bills presented by other legislatures if they don't support, those other legislatures don't support your bill, the Black Caucus. That's why we lost Lance Yednock. He was a good legislator, but he couldn't get his bills passed because if he didn't vote for their bill, they wouldn't vote for his bill. I don't know how to do it other than trying to go to your legislatures and telling them, buck the system, do the best you can to vote against these ridiculous bills. Anyway, getting back to they threw money at it. The state of Illinois threw money at the problem with the Safety Act. The Safety Act created a lot of appeals. The reason why people are getting let out is because there are so many detainable offenses and there are so many that are not detainable. And the ones that are not detainable are, in my opinion, they should be detainable, and they used to be where you had to post bond. So the problem became for the judges, and the judges are going to detain people, and they have detained people in LaSalle County whenever there's a detainable offense, but not always when there is not a detainable offense. It is a big problem. Problem for us, these guys deal with it every day. We recently had a judge release a person charged with unlawful use of weapons and possession of a weapon by a felon, even though he had his fingerprints on the gun. So that's pretty good evidence that this person is going to be convicted, but nonetheless, he got released. So that's what happens. It's not us, meaning the prosecution. It's the judges trying to follow the law, which they do the best they can, but they can't always refuse to follow the law and keep somebody in the jail when they're not supposed to. The Appellate Prosecutor's Office and the Appellate Defender's Office, which does all the appeals through the state of Illinois, was given $10 million each when the Safety Act, because they knew the appeals were going to increase, which they did. They increased threefold. Then recently at the summer conference for the State Attorney's Office, we just learned that the state of Illinois just gave another $10 million to the Appellate Prosecutor's Office and Appellate Defender's Office. So why isn't that money being used for a better purpose? We don't know. We just have to try to work with the system and try to work around the system and have your legislatures do what they're supposed to, and that is fight for your district and try to get those laws repealed and get laws back on the books that are going to help protect the community. I have these these people here, I know they have some things to say to answer some of your questions about the cases that we've done in Streator, which is a lot. We've solved 2 of the homicides. We have 2 homicides unsolved. Once again, because as Woody said, and the chief said, that we have a lack of cooperation. And what it is, it's reflective of what happens in Chicago. That is, somebody gets shot, nobody hears nothing, no one sees nothing, no one comes forward, even though it's their young kids, their children that are in the crossfire. But still, how do you solve that? It's very, very difficult. You just have to try and encourage the neighbors, your friends, whatever, to come forward. As the chief said, come forward when you hear something, see something, and let the police officers know. They're really trying, they do a great job. And I will say this, they're undermanned. The city council, whether it be through taxes, grants, whatever, you need to help these people out. They're worked hard. They're working 12-hour shifts. They have young people here that need to be trained in investigation so that the investigations get done quickly, reports are received, and I've got my people here showing me results of a lot of crimes that occurred where we don't have any police reports. We need those police reports. We've done more search warrants in Streator than we have in any city in the county. 10 search warrants, 5 search warrants per incident. So that's every time we have assistant state's attorney filling out the affidavits, going to a judge, getting a search warrant, obtaining all the evidence seized during that search warrant, and then processing it, getting it to the crime lab. Also, if it's a crime lab, something goes to the crime lab, they prioritize it. So only if it's a homicide, a young person killed, whatever, will we get those reports back quickly. Otherwise, it takes time, and we have to utilize that time the best we can.
So I read in the paper today that, or even yesterday for that matter, over the weekend, I heard about the businesses in town that had been broken into and had damage and fire, and you've been asking for our video footage of any of these crimes, and you have it, is my understanding, but yet the state's attorney doesn't want to prosecute them. Can you elaborate?
Yeah. No, hold on. You guys know about that case?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. This is Laura Hall.
So the arson that you're referring to, both myself and another assistant state's attorney were on the phone with Streator PD more than once Friday afternoon as the investigation was occurring. It's not that we don't want to prosecute the case. We want to prosecute the case. The investigation is ongoing. You have to remember that a Facebook picture and someone matching a description doesn't mean that we have evidence that is proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and that is what we have to have to get a guilty verdict in front of 12 jurors. We are working with the Streator Police Department in regard to those businesses and that arson, and I am optimistic that as the investigation continues to unfold, as people continue to care enough to get involved, to share their video and things of that nature, that we will be in a position hopefully to be able to file charges.
Ma'am, don't we have traffic camera footage showing those 2 individuals walking out of the west door of the fellowship hall at New Beginnings Baptist Church? Do we not have that evidence?
We have video footage that puts them in the area. I can't go into detail, obviously, with it being an ongoing investigation. I can tell you we do not know what precisely occurred inside of the church, and that is still ongoing.
And minutes after they exited the building, there was evidence of smoke coming out of the top of the roof, I believe. Is that correct, Chief?
It was several minutes. Yeah.
Several minutes, okay.
It wasn't 10. It was shorter than that.
We also have to be able to prove that it's an arson, and that requires the state fire marshal to reach their conclusive report, which we don't have yet. It takes time for those reports to get done, but as of Friday afternoon, when we were last on the phone prior to the Facebook pages, which I think is kind of what garnered attention, we did not have a determinate cause of the fire at that moment. And obviously that's a critical piece of evidence to charge someone with arson.
I've been in contact with him, by the way. So the ATF agent that was there, and good luck.
I'm hopeful that once we have that report, we'll be in a position.
Well, we don't need good luck. We need evidence, and that's where people come to play. And I would also add that I'm not prejudging you, but we had a jury trial 2 weeks ago. Matt Kidder did it. It was a shooting. A guy was shot, broke into a house. He was shot at and hit. He left, went to Morris, went to the hospital, was interviewed at the hospital with body cameras, and he made some statements that were, as one of the jurors I think said, Matt, that was it. It was over with by that time. So we need to have good, fair jurors, but by the same token, we can't prejudge the case as much as we would like to, but you are innocent until proven guilty. Where's Jason? Mark, did you want to say something?
Yeah. Well, guys, I want to say a couple things first. In my other life, I was a baseball coach, and I was lucky enough to coach a lot of kids from Streator. And there was a toughness and a pride about their town that they had that I always really respected. And that's one of the reasons we're here tonight. We want to support both the residents, who we know how proud you are of your town, and we want to support the police department, who not only do they need your help, they need the support of the council, like they said, because they are undermanned. They definitely, I've seen them after an 18-hour shift and how hard it is for them during an investigation. But just so you know, the process is that they complete their investigation, they forward up everything to our office. We have then an assistant then reviews it, and then we determine, at that point, what we're gonna do charging-wise. Just because somebody gets out of jail doesn't mean we're not gonna prosecute that case. The prosecution is ongoing. It's the Safety Act that you guys talked about and why they're not in jail. To answer your question, what can you do? You can do this. You can be united, because this is a town that's always been united, always been tough, always been strong. Shoulder to shoulder in this room tonight, being united, we can push that Chicago ilk out of here. I'm a lifelong resident. That's right. So I hope that, we're here for you guys. We're here because we believe in the town. It's worth saving, okay? And that's what we're gonna do.
Is there anything we can do about the Safety Act? Can you tell us who voted for it? Or did Pritzker just put it in all by himself? And if so, is there any way we can get rid of him?
Well, still on.
Can we get away?
Again, it boils down to the Black Caucus and their ability to have swing votes, not just from Chicago, but in other areas, Rockford, the other areas I mentioned. You need to do it here locally, to have them do it out there. And had a thought that I was going to mention with regard to homes. We've seized and forfeited 3 homes in Streator, which hasn't been done before. So they're gone. And the problem with it, as the young lady was saying earlier, is that we have to prove that the landlord knew or should have known what was going on. It may seem obvious to you and everybody else. Again, once again, we have to prove it. Some of the houses that are, and it's a lack of industry that has gone away from Streator since the years I've known it back in the 80s, that has caused this problem. But we have to be able to prove that the person knew or should have known. So, in fact, one of the houses we took was from a guy in Chicago who bought up some of these houses, and he's renting them out Airbnb, which means it's a rental, and so it makes it more difficult for us in order to seize it and then forfeit it. So we try to work around the laws by having the evidence to show that this is a crack house, this is a drug house, and it is a menace, and we need to get rid of it.
What is the current state of our neighborhood watch in town? Like, why can't we get more people out in the street, watching, reporting, taking walks, walking their dogs? Maybe we could get, I absolutely volunteer, if anybody else wants to, maybe we can set something up.
The limits of the law without breaking it ourselves.
Well, we don't need to, obviously you don't want to interact, but we can report, Trust me, I'd like to interact, but you can't do that, but we can report, we can make phone calls.
Yeah, Tony Pettit, she actually ran the Neighborhood Watch for years. I had something John and I had talked about, possibly looking into building back up to build better trust with the community.
Well, I absolutely think we need to. It's obviously worse now, you know what I mean? And we just need people out there walking. And I know everybody's got a dog, right? Let's go out there and let's walk. I appreciate it, but I think we can't.
So we did have an active neighborhood watch for a number of years here in Streator. The problem is the one that is still today. People would call us and say, oh, this is going on in our neighborhood. And it was one of the police officers, I can't remember his name, it's been that long. But shoot, he was very responsive. And he would always come to the meetings. We held monthly meetings, and when a neighbor had an issue, they would say, oh, we have an issue, this is what's going on, and that police officer and myself and the other members of Neighborhood Watch would go to the neighborhood and say, this is how you do it, this is how you start a watch, this is what you want to do, they would invite all their neighbors over, we had forums, and somebody had to volunteer to be the go-to guy. One guy on your block, or your 2 blocks, or 3 blocks, that would say, I'll be the go-to guy. You got an issue, come and tell me. No one wants to be the go-to guy. Nobody wants to come to the monthly meeting. Nobody wants to be that person. As a result, Neighborhood Watch now no longer exists in Streator because the community involvement had fizzled down to 0. I ran the Neighborhood Watch on my block, and for years, I wrote a weekly or monthly newsletter. I think monthly, wasn't it? Monthly. Wrote a monthly newsletter, typed it up. This is who's moving in, this is who's moving out, this is what's going on in the community. I hand delivered them to every single house for 2 blocks in my neighborhood. Nobody wants to do that. It's a way to communicate your block, but you gotta get somebody who wants to do it. I will be happy to put it together with you if you like. I still have stuff.
I definitely want to respond to that though. I think that Neighborhood Watch is definitely a general term, I should say, because I know there's a lot of bureaucracy like that, and I don't think we need bureaucracy and paperwork and forms. I'm saying maybe a group of people just to walk the streets, you know what I mean? Maybe a Facebook page of people who just want to go walking the streets together. I mean, we have the Streator Walking Club, things like that, you know?
I had our block, I had 7th Street area, and they paid me. We had 5 drug houses at one time on that street. I got tired of seeing car after car after car come up, hand out a paper bag and money go in the window. What I did, I took a notebook while they was there, and I walked down, wrote down the type of car, the color, and the license plate. And I said, you either get out of here or I'm turning this in. There's none in my neighborhood now that I know of. Because I won't put up with it. I was the Gestapo, as they call it. They didn't like me. And that's what you gotta do. You gotta actually write down the cars coming in and out.
I think I have a little horse run down. But when they're pew pew, I
don't care. I go down to the sidewalk and I go down.
Do we have a little decorum here? It's getting a little out of hand.
You have a question?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
I'd like to address this to the chief. My name is Ron Hedgeland. I'm a local businessman. I'm born and raised in LaSalle County. I've lived here all my life except when I served my country overseas. And I would like to have you explain how the police department operates its patrols during the day and the night. I think that would be very informative to this entire audience, because I do not see the police as often as I used to. Here's 2 other major issues that need to be addressed before somebody gets killed. Bicyclers, 4-wheelers, these kids riding around after dark, 10 o'clock at night, you know, dark clothing, no lights, no nothing. I don't live in the city. I live on Sharon Road. I've tried to annex to this city for 39 years. I'm not contiguous, I can't get in. There's 4,900 other people within 1.5 miles of the city limits that could be annexed. We have never had a great or a vociferous attempt to annex people since Scott Wrighton was here. I blame that on the city councils. You should understand there's another 5,000 people out there, and we need to have service. We live on the rear end of the county. If I have to call a deputy sheriff, if he's in Mendota, I have to wait 45 minutes for him to get to my house because somebody broke in my car in the driveway. They're on the south end of the county in South Streator. Same situation. Where are the patrols? How come these bicyclers are not being arrested? The laws are very clear. Read your rules of the road. I don't understand it, Chief. Maybe you can help explain it to me.
I'd be glad to. First of all, we're most likely not going to arrest someone riding a bicycle on the sidewalk or running a light or something like that. More than likely to get us a non-traffic citation to appear in court. Secondly, regarding the ATVs, we do pursue them when it is safe to do so. Sometimes it's not. We don't want to create a situation that's more dangerous than what they're out there doing in the street. If they cause a crash, hold up, sir. Now listen to you, please listen to me. If we cause a crash and someone gets injured or worse, gets killed, then we've defeated our purpose to go out there and try to stop that person on the ATV or the trail bike. For instance, last Friday when the shooting occurred at, 5 o'clock or whatever, we're out there trying to find out what happened. 300 block of South Vermilion, I believe it was, right? While we're all out there trying to determine who had what and where they went, there's some knucklehead riding around us on a blue trail bike, popping wheelies and God knows what else, trying to get our attention. While we're trying to rectify this shooting and trying to find out what happened. Because we had a house 2 blocks away that had 2 bullets in it. So there's a lot of disrespect. I won't say a lot, but there's a significant amount of disrespect by a lot of our young people on trail bikes, on ATVs. And by the way, I would tell all of you, all of your parents, please don't buy those things for them for Christmas. They don't need to be out here on that. They're not street licensable. They shouldn't be on the street. Please don't get those for your kids. You're probably going to wind up with a tragedy, some of you. So don't do it. If you don't have a safe place for them to ride it in a wooded area, don't get them for them. Regarding traffic, our officers are on the streets every day doing traffic missions both days and nights. They have specific locations they go to. I'm at the YMCA every morning working out before I come here to work. I hear a lot from the seniors over at the YMCA every morning of what's people speeding down their block, doing this, doing that, and I send officers over there. I tell them, hey guys, go over there and sit for 20 minutes, get your radar out. And they do make stops. Now I can't order them to write citations. We don't have a quota here, and I can't order them to do that. The vast majority of times, I will tell you, when the officers make stops here, they're going to issue a verbal warning. Some people do get citations, but the vast majority of the time, they're getting verbal warnings. It's up to the officer's discretion. I can't dictate that to them. But we are out here every day doing traffic missions, and they have to send me an email. The watch commander has to send me an email every day at the end of the day, where they were, how long, how many, did they make a stop, did they not make a stop, did they issue verbal warning, did they issue a citation, whatever. Days and night shifts. So they are out here. We normally have 3, sometimes 4 officers a shift, and they are out here. I'm out here every day for an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. And I've seen some of you on calls, and I know some of you have seen me on calls, because I go on a lot of calls. I know sometimes they need a hand out here, and I have no problem pitching in. I had to arrest some guy last Monday. You know, I was out with a guy on a domestic. I have no problem with pitching in where I can fit in. It's not an issue for me. Yes, ma'am.
Did you say there's 3 or 4 officers out there
per shift?
12-hour shift?
Yes.
On the road?
Yes.
And how about in the office?
Pardon me?
Anyone, like here, just like one person here in case?
No. Everybody's on the street. The shift commander and the 3 officers, yes.
Is that enough for a town our size?
I would say usually it is. Usually it is. And also, sir, with regard to LaSalle County, sometimes they are far away. Sometimes they'll call us and say, hey, are you guys close? And we're going to handle those calls. Sometimes they back us up, sometimes we back them up. It's a reciprocal agreement because we all out here in law enforcement need each other. We know that the county deputies are spread out. We understand that. Sometimes we need help, sometimes they need help. We all pitch in where we fit in.
Chief, would it hurt?
Go ahead.
To have maybe once a month, drive in the outlying areas that aren't in the city. If the people see a police patrol car driving around, they understand. If they don't ever see you, they're going to take every advantage that they can.
I'm not going to tell you what hurt at all, but I will tell you. But I will tell you, sir, we handle an awful high number of calls for service.
I understand that.
Both sheriffs of both counties would tell you that. We handle a lot of calls for service here in Streator, a lot.
So on my way here, at the chicken joint, they're on East First Street and 23.
Yes,
There was
ma'am.
like 4 or 5 squad cars just there that were responding to something.
As we mentioned earlier, we do a lot of directed patrols, the overtime missions with K-9 patrols. That's going on tonight. We've got one going on tonight, actually. So that's why there's a lot more law enforcement in town tonight.
Okay. So they got them here to like help them out.
Yes, concentrated effort by multiple, back home we call it wolf packing. Here we call it something else.
Woody, can I say one more time?
Yes, sir.
And I'll be quiet.
Oh, no, I don't mind. Go ahead, sir.
Go over to the high school at 10 after 3.
Mm-hmm.
Take the back road by the American Legion.
Yeah.
Through the alley. And you can pinch every single student. I have seen a patrol car patrolling that road one time. Guess what? School wasn't in session. A lot of good it does. Somebody's gonna get killed. There's a lot of young kids that live on that street.
And something else, we just reached an agreement with Streator High School to where we have an officer back in the school. He just started there
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago. So that's something that's, I'll talk to him about that as well, and it's something we can look into.
Yeah, look at Chris Osborne. He's a school resource officer at Streator High.
I saw some nods, yes and no, when we were talking about the staffing of 2 to 3 patrols per shift. What goes into the consideration of the number of patrols you have on shift? And for this side of town, with the volume of crime that you see, what is going into consideration for that?
Per our union contract, we have a minimum operating staff of 3, so there'll never be less than 3 officers per shift. Currently, our maximum staff is 4, so on any given day, we have 4 officers scheduled. That doesn't take into account if a guy's gonna call in a vacation day, sick day, something like that.
Or has a court appearance.
If we drop below that 3, then we have to call for overtime.
The maximum is 4 per union contract?
No, there's no maximum per union contract. That is just where our staffing is at right now.
Are you looking to add to staff, or does that?
I will never tell you I've got enough officers. It'll never happen.
I don't think any agency would tell you that.
But we also understand that that is something that budgetary and cities have to look at as well.
I'm going to say there's not enough. I know there's not enough. A city this size should have at least a minimum of 6 officers on the road, and that entails, because when you have an officer write a ticket, a DUI for example, then he's got to take the person in, so that reduces it to 5. So if you got 3, and say each officer arrests 2 DUIs, you got 1 on the road. And I would make this challenge to the mayor who's here and the city manager, is to get these people more officers to get on the road.
And I'll just mention, since I've been mayor, we've had added head count to the police department. We're consistently, as a city, you're trying to balance your services and those property taxes with what we can provide for services. We don't want to tax you out of your home, but we also want to provide police, we want to provide fire. So it's always a balance game. We are going into budget season again. The gentleman over here mentioned annexation. I think most of the council would love annexation and bringing and making our town bigger. That has to go again, it has to go to a referendum, or you have to get an agreement of at least 50% of a neighborhood to sign on and say they want to annex. We actually had a neighborhood that we were able to get a grant and offer no sewer, or offer sewer at no cost to them, as well as we were going to defer taxes, and that neighborhood didn't want to come in and annex into us. So what does that do for us? There's 5 taxes that are based on population. Those taxes do not come to the city. There's also the property taxes that are not coming to the city to help us staff up. But we do send our officers out to calls when we need it. Citizens in Streator are paying for LaSalle County. They're paying for Streator Police Department. If you're outside, you're paying for whatever county you're in. So that is, I mean, we will love it. If you are outside of the city limits, you can sign a pre-annexation agreement that provides services to your home. In the event that you're ever contiguous, we bring you in automatically. You cover half the cost of that property tax, but that'll get you police and fire. So, I mean, we're for it, but it has to be basically agreed to, or we have to force annex you in. I know there's actually a note from a former mayor in the mayor's desk of a big, kind of that neighborhood, I think in the 90s, and some controversy as far as annexing there, so. But that is, it's tax. I mean, if everybody in this room says, raise our taxes, we'll do it. We'd love to bring you more police officers. But we also know, it's hard for some families to pay that bill every year as well. So there's that's that balance game. We're trying to get it right, but we don't always.
So this is something that might help for solutions, I don't know. But I'm curious if we've ever looked into doing something called a community violence intervention. So Johns Hopkins University has done extensive research on this for towns similar to ours, and we know that this is a very complex problem, and as you said, you need the community's support behind you, and clearly the community is willing to do that. And we know that in Streator we have a very rich heritage of volunteerism and community pride, and so it wouldn't be a simple undertaking by any means, but these community violence intervention programs target multiple areas of how community violence happens. So I've heard lots of things about children and parents and schools and all of those things. And I have the unique position to get to work with kids and parents every day as a school counselor. And there are a lot of things that this town does really well, and there are a lot of areas that we lack some resources in. But I truly believe that people who come together and work for a common good can change the direction of our town. And I really think people want tangible solutions. And again, it's not going to be an easy fix. It's going to take people and man hours and work. But I'm just curious if that would be something that could be looked into by the city council, that could be presented to members of the community. The research from Johns Hopkins is online. There's a few other places that have done research as well, but those would be tangible solutions that people could get involved in. That the opposite, I guess, of feeling just total hopelessness and desperation is action, and that would give people an actionable item to step up and do the things that need to be done in the community. So if those of you that are interested, you can research, or you can Google Johns Hopkins University Community Violence Intervention. It gives you all kinds of different information for free on there. But again, it would have to be a partnership with the city council, the schools, the police department, all of those things. And I think that people are hopefully ready and willing to step up and put their volunteer time where their mouth is and do something to support community as a whole.
Hello everyone, my name is Justin Grimwood. I'm from Reading Township. I want to get back to what Tara was saying. As Reading, we kind of saw the problems going on. So we took action on ourselves, and this is even going over like Sharon Road. Eagle Township should be taking action. Otter Creek Township should be taking action. These townships can also pull their own weight also. We all installed 12 of the flock cameras in our area. I was one of the trustees leading that program. And then we're also looking at putting a full-time officer from Livingston County in our township also. So that's where, us as a township, we're able to leverage, our little government to do what we can do. So this is always on the back of Eagle Township and Otter Creek Township to start stepping up, and they can have LaSalle County deputy over there if they provide enough funds.
Why don't you patrol East West Street after 9? I go to Fialco's.
So right now we pay Livingston County a partial for 40 hours a week. We're looking to step that up. I'd like to have 24-hour coverage in South Streator. So we can always have an officer patrolling those cameras picking up those hot spots.
You wanna blame the other townships, that's fine, but clean your own house first.
Well, sir, we have. Carriage Lanes is a perfect example. Carriage Lanes, we had a big shooting over there last year.
West Street every night. Go out there after dark, sir.
You do have a great officer. Officer, I believe his name is Jenkins.
Yes.
Okay, so on Cleveland Street, if your vehicle is not registered to somebody on Cleveland Street, he will pull you over.
So Cleveland is one of our hot spots, and we put a camera just on Cleveland, just to watch that. There's nowhere in South Streeter you can go without getting picked up by a camera.
I'd like to say something on behalf of the sheriff's offices.
We exhausted our budget where public safety is number one. That's how I look at it.
So where did you get those funds, may I ask you?
That's the funds that we have in our township, accessible. We have a surplus. We spend what we need to spend.
Let me say something about the outlying areas, because the sheriff of LaSalle County, Adam Diss, who couldn't be here, is a good friend of mine, and he has spent a hell of a lot of time down here in Streator helping out the police departments, executing search warrants. He's brought his tactical team down here several times to break into houses to do search warrants. So, as the gentleman said, you could have more deputies, but he has to patrol the entire county, which is 1,200 square miles. From up near Lake Holiday all the way down to the Panhandle, that's 75 miles. So it takes a lot of time, but the resources are such that if they're able to help the county, just like they do at Lake Holiday, then they'll send someone down.
Well, actually, they're in Livingston County, so it's a different, I'm not from Streator. I've been in city management for over 35 years, so I've had the privilege of working in a number of different communities. I think there is a need for the entire Streator area, all the units of government, to get together to talk about some of these issues, to coordinate what each of us are doing.
And once a month, we do go to Hot Ant, the Sheriff's Department, where we have Long Point, Cornell, all the other smaller villages. Once a month, we get together, talk about what's going on in the community, where to look out at.
Yeah,
it's been working out great.
That's great, but I think you'd mentioned the other townships around Streator. We all ought to get together in the same room and talk through some of these issues, so that we all have limited resources.
And
Let's
I've
try to
approached
spread
them
them out.
also about getting cameras, but they just see, nope, it's not our problem, it's
Yeah.
Streator. We did this to help Streator out, because what goes on in Streator comes through our community also.
Well, we just worked through a major issue when AMT left, and we had to develop our own ambulance service. And Reading Fire District and the others in the area worked well with us to get this new program going, and I think it's going pretty well.
Yep.
And I see plenty of opportunities for us to work together, whether it be in economic development, just utilities, all sorts of things where we can just work together, find economies of scale, and better serve the larger community.
Yeah, I live in Reading Township. I'm employed by Otter Creek Township. And when we get complaints at Otter Creek, and there's nothing that we can do, I'm just an employee, this is my thoughts, we have to turn them back into LaSalle County. And it can take a couple of years to get a problem taken care of. With the LaSalle County and Livingston County cops, I've had problems in my neighborhood where I've called Livingston County and they just tell me they're too busy. I have told them that's fine, I'll take care of it myself. And I've even given them 15 minutes to come and take care of the problem, or I will. And it has worked, but they were close. Now, one problem that I'm seeing here in town from the 70s, when people really took a pride in being from this town, and he was talking about the baseball. Everybody cared about this town. It had its pride. people that are coming here from Chicago know now that they can just mow over the people here because they're afraid. People, you need to get out and help. It's not a me society, and this is my little lot, and I'm not gonna do anything else. You need to, like Tony said, start working together. Get that pride back and push these people out. Show them you're not afraid. Get tougher. I wouldn't say physically tougher, but get tougher. Call the cops more. Get it on recording. If they get a flood of calls, they're gonna get tired of it and it's gonna go higher. And eventually, you might get something done. It might take a while, but the people that aren't from this town will figure out that they're not wanted here and they're not gonna get rid of their stuff. If they come here to get out of that problem and to change their life, that's one thing. But if they come here because they know that they can mow us over, they're gonna keep doing it. Thank you.
Nicely said, thank you. I have a story, because there were a bunch of kids that were causing problems in one of the parks. So every day I'd go and I'd take my lunch break late, and I'd go sit and watch them. After about 2 weeks, they're like, oh, the mayor's here. The troublemakers would leave and carry on, and the good kids would say, hey, how's it? You know, we're friendly, very nice, but sometimes, yeah, it's just showing that somebody's watching and somebody's there. I don't want to keep the crowd here all night. You're welcome to stay, you're welcome to stay longer, but
We have a question.
we have work to do. I guess that's my big thing. We have work to do. If there's groups here that would be interested in creating a neighborhood watch or working on that, I'll have a sign-in sheet, or if you want to reach out in some way, let's look at getting that back together. I talked with Deputy Chief Wood and Chief Turner beforehand that this should be a more than 1 year. Chief Franklin, sorry. I'm getting lots going on in my head, so I'm sorry. But I do want to just mention that we should do this more than, this should be, you know, whether it's every couple months or every 6 months, but let's revisit and schedule another meeting so that we can keep going on. I thank you all for being here. Because to me, everybody, if you're caring and you're here, that means that hope is not lost on Streator. There's people here that are willing to volunteer. I do see some hands in the back, but just I wanted to mention that to you. Go ahead if you want to. Tim's going.
I had a quick question for you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
You said that the problem with the number of police officers out in the street right now is a budgetary issue. What can you do for us to readjust that budget? You said it's a balancing game. So are you going to rebalance that budget for us? Because as of right now, we definitely need more this year.
We review the budget every year, from capital expenditures to, we have a whole process. We'll go through in November and we'll vote in December and pass the budget. So there's typically 3 or 4 sessions where we're looking at that. We've cut and cut and cut costs where we can. Again, this year we faced things like a 20% insurance increase for employees. So there's always, every time I think we're gonna get ahead and have a couple $100,000 to do a playground or add this or add that, something comes and smacks us in the face, and it's every year. But we try to watch the budget. We try to stay below a high tax increase.
Are you going to prioritize police officers this year since we have an uptick in crime?
Well, we'll hit that in budget season. What we do know is police department will be requesting additional flock cameras. Last year at budget season, we did add funding for a K-9 officer, so we have 2 now, 1 on each shift.
What about these community patrol officers?
We have 1, we do have 1 community service officer. And that job role is to take some of the things that we don't want our officers to do. We want them on the streets patrolling. We don't want them running paperwork over to Ottawa, to the courthouse. We don't want doing fingerprinting, things like that. We try to take some of the administrative duties that a regular citizen can do off of the police so that they can be more effective in their job and do the things that you need a badge to do. So, you know, we had 2 at one point, and one of them actually became an officer and has done very well. So it's, again.
Are you gonna put all that on the site for the surveillance and neighborhood watch where people can go on there and volunteer or get together?
Yeah, what we can do if there's an interest meeting is I can set up a date and put that out there, and we'll release it. We'll do a press release like we did for this as well.
And that's just going on Village of Streator?
Yeah, it's City of Streator. Yeah, it's ci.streator.il.us. It's a lot. Just search, just Google City of Streator, it'll come up. Okay, yes, sir.
What are we gonna do about the Safety Act? Is there anything we can do about that?
Again, contact your representatives. I'll post links to who they are.
You can list all the people who said yes for it, or was it by our governor? How was that put into the deal?
I think that was covered, but that's,
Then we should know every single person. You can Google that too.
it's, yeah, the law, if it was passed in Springfield, it's on the Illinois website.
Streetor did it by himself.
No, he has to have people to do that.
We need to be voting for people that are enforcing.
It's just a reminder. I'd like to remind everybody that everyone wants more officers on the street. They want more officers in the office. They want more officers everywhere. The city council would love to do that. We as citizens have to remember that they are driven by their budget, and the one way that we can help them most is either by annexing property or buying everything possible, including vehicles and appliances, what have you, within our community, so that we have the tax money for these people to spend how we want it to be spent. But just remember, shop Streator first.
Can you bring them up to date, the gains we've made in the staffing of the police department in the last couple of years?
Since 2019, I believe we're down to 18 officers in 2019. That was due to officers retiring. We had some off on injury, and we were just not in a good place. We're currently up to 22 officers with a 23rd in the academy starting in January. So we're up 5 spots from where we were in 2019. It takes time. The academy now is 16 weeks, followed by at least 12 weeks of field training. So from the time we hire an officer, we're at least 6 months until they're even on their own. So yeah, these things do take time.
We have an officer currently in the academy that will get out around just before Christmas, I believe, right? Yes, sir.
Is there anything we can do, or are there grants available that we could help make happen to buy flock cameras or fund another officer or a squad car? The state gives grants for everything.
Yeah, the federal government regularly does COPS grants, community-oriented policing grants, to allow us to get officers. They did one, I want to say 2 years ago. We're always looking for them. It's one thing I always make sure I'm looking for is any type of grant. We were just awarded a grant, a less lethal grant for new tasers. Yeah, when it comes to manpower, that's definitely something we look at. Usually with something like a COPS grant, it'll allow you to hire officers for 3 years. After 3 years, then the city's on their own, but they have to sign the agreement that they're not going to drop below a certain number of officers at that time.
Yeah, the COPS grant is great. But just remember, when it gets cut off, the city has to have that funding available to continue to pay those salaries and benefits. And you just have no idea how much infrastructure costs go into managing a police department. Vehicles, uniforms, equipment, radar gun just broke down. We got to get that fixed. Just computers, paper. There's so many things you need to manage a police. I don't know how small towns like less than 4,000 even manage to keep a police department. I really don't, because the costs are so enormous just to fund the infrastructure to keep the police department rolling out there on an everyday basis, day and night.
How many
They're what, 3,000 a piece?
The initial cost of a flock camera is about $9,000
Yeah, right.
installed, followed by $3,000 per year per camera.
Yeah.
So right now, we currently have 8 cameras, and I want to thank you guys over at Reading for taking care of the south side. Yeah, you guys, the ones you guys have installed have helped us out a lot. And it's made our job easier because then it allowed us to focus more on the north side and east and west since you guys took care of the south border. So I do want to thank you for that. We really appreciate that.
What about these portable ones you see in these bigger towns in bad areas, like, those having to set up a little two-wheel trailer, and they got the camera, they got blue light going around.
Some mobile license plate readers can cost up to $50,000, but yeah, it's a cost that you can always look into. Right now, Flock is a cheaper option.
Woody, I was going to add that I have, as well as the chief here, drug fund money available that's received as a result of forfeitures and taken money. In my account, it's over $200,000. I recently bought a dog for Ottawa PD. That's training, $12,000 there. Mendota PD, another $15,000 there. That's money that's not coming out of the city, or in that case, the counties. It's money that's available. In addition to that, there is the opioid fund, which I control through the Attorney General's office, which currently has almost $700,000 in there. And I've used that also for the same purpose because its intent is to prevention from overdoses, which is usually caused by fentanyl, and the opioid fund is created, and the lawsuit says that it can be used for prevention. So that, in my opinion, you can find no better way to prevent this from happening is if you prevent the drugs from getting in the hands of the people. So just, yeah, there's an application. I don't know if I have it online, but if you call the State Attorney's Office, there's an application that will be filled out. It's going to be reviewed by me and then ultimately scrutinized by the Attorney General of the State of Illinois that it meets the criteria for the settlement. And we haven't dealt it out willy-nilly because, again, if I authorize a payment out of the opioid fund and the Attorney General says it was not authorized, then it's got to be paid back. So I really don't want to bring that on anybody.
On a funding question, so we can't go against the people that are the problem, but can we go against the landlord? Can we just, every time the police go to a property and they have these problem people, why don't we hand them a $5,000 bill and say, here you go, right? There's your ticket.
For one reason, they're not going to pay it. It's just like right now, the same gentleman who introduced the Safety Act recently introduced a bill to allow an individual to get 3 traffic tickets, not have to pay a fine, and have no result in your driver's license. And it's just absurd. Fortunately, the legislature didn't pass that. But that's like telling your kids, you can go out and steal 3 times and nothing's going to happen. Wherein lies the difference? It's ridiculous. And that's how the Safety Act got passed. So we have to work on getting it amended and or repealed.
So the town can't find these people.
And how do we?
You could Google it. It's online. Safety Act.
Safety Act.
I don't have the bill number. You do?
I don't offhand know.
It's been in effect for over a year. It was passed 2 years ago. So.
Joe, could you further answer this question? I found it very intriguing. If you could levy a fine against a property owner and he doesn't pay it, can't you put a lien on it?
You can. In order to execute, in order to collect the money, you have to execute on the lien, and they have a right of redemption. And if they redeem it, then that's it. They maybe pay the fine with the amount of money that they got. But other than that, there's just no way. Especially if the property is next to worthless, you're throwing good money after bad when you hire the city attorney in order to go after someone where you're never going to collect anything.
Yeah, we're tearing down about 8-10 homes a year.
Experience that right now.
Yeah, and even though we do get grants to support the program, it still costs the city. I think we budgeted last year about $50,000. I mean, we may be spending more than that. There's a school or a house we're going to be tearing down on Bloomington shortly, over by the school. That's pretty run down, and in that case, the school's going to reimburse us for the tear down and they'll take over the property. But we're tearing down these homes. And a lot of times they're drug homes or they're just homes that kind of been vacant and kids break into it, it just falls in disrepair. Well,
I mean, we have experience with that. As May of last year, we went after the house on 121 West Hickory. With that home, we actually were able to get it condemned due to safety with our rental property inspection. That was a faster process than going through the nuisance abatement ordinance. So we went after it that way, tore it down, put a lien against the property, but if we'll ever refund that money or see it again, we don't know. So we do budget $50,000 a year towards vacant properties. And then we also were awarded a Strong Communities grant, which was, I believe, $78,000, $70,000 to $80,000 last year that we've used as a reimbursement. And that's how it's set up, but we've continued to go. I know we're working on an additional problem home right now. And we just keep going through the court system and doing what we can there. It's not a quick one. Sometimes it takes us several months to get that done. Sometimes it's 18 months. But there's, I believe, there's Water Street, one of the ones we're looking at right now. So we've gone through Water Street.
Water, Cedar?
Water, Cedar, yes.
There's a handful that we're working on constantly in the staff.
Okay, we're gonna take one more question. Ma'am in the red hat, please.
It wasn't a question, it's just a suggestion. You talked about maybe doing a meeting every 6 months or whatever, and volunteering meeting. Is there any way that you can maybe move it somewhere else? Because you had a lot of upset community members that left. I know I stood in the hallway for the first half of the meeting, and I couldn't hear anything. So is there any way that we can move this somewhere else so you don't?
We're definitely going to move it if we get crowds this size. Yeah, we'll
high school auditorium a bit better.
Or live stream it or something, so.
We do have it recorded and it'll go onto YouTube. We have a City of Streator YouTube channel.
Yeah, but we need a bigger place.
But yeah, we definitely can look at that. This kind of came about Friday morning. We have a 48-hour notice for the Open Meeting Act. So we picked a time and place and went for it. But as we plan, yeah, absolutely, and yeah, understood. And like I said at the beginning, we don't know if we were gonna get 10 people or we were gonna get 1,000. It was just kind of let's try it and see what happens.
Didn't the Armory have done a good choice of whether and what?
We did, but we already had noticed it up,
The
so.
acoustics down there, no.
These are terrible.
Absolutely not. No. You wouldn't be able to hear anything.
But we can kind of, maybe the high school let us use the auditorium or something for that extent.
Yeah, we'll find some place that'll work better.
We want to thank everybody for coming out and caring and bringing your opinions, bringing your questions here. We appreciate the feedback, and thank you much.
Are you ready for this? Speaking of, I have to.
How you doing, bud?
I'm good. How are you?
Living the dream. Sneaking out the back.
Sounds good to me. Speaking of that, I am going to be running. I think a lot of it. I think a lot of it. So, right. See how it goes. I'm rooting for you. You have my vote. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. As always, you have my vote. I think you are. As always, it's about making options on the ballot, not about me winning. Right. So, I'm gonna sneak out the ballot too. See you, buddy. Take care.